So episode 5 of The Last of Us has arrived a couple of days early, in an effort to not have its viewership affected by the incoming Super Bowl. And as with any other episode, there were some things to love, and some things that kind of missed the mark for me. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
Come on. Do it! Do it!
So I gotta be honest with you guys, this episode of The Last of Us had me a bit conflicted. Early on this week, I did find myself starting to check out a little bit. Mostly due to the fact that the first 18 minutes or so of this episode is dedicated to showing us how these new characters, Henry and Sam, came to find Joel and Ellie. Henry and Sam were in fact the characters introduced at the very end of the previous episode. And yes, this is the very same Henry that Kathleen is desperately trying to find and presumably kill, for reasons that we weren't really sure of up until this point. Here's my issue. I said this before when I compared certain aspects of this show to the era of The Walking Dead that started to lose my interest. And that's because they dedicate entire episodes or chunks of episodes to characters that I don't know and don't really interest me all that much.
I don't care!
Now I understand Henry and Sam's purpose. They are intended to be the mirror image of the Joel and Ellie relationship. But we could have got the gist of that idea without wasting 18 minutes at the beginning of this episode on their story. And this is one of the problems I do see with this show that has now become reoccurring. Every time I feel like we are moving forward narratively, it feels like we have to take a couple steps back first.
Take your time. Gotta crawl before you walk.
And now it's starting to create an uneven experience for me. And again, it does feel like they are running out of time. There's still a lot of ground to cover from that first game, and we only have now 4 episodes to do it in. Early in this episode was one of the first times all season where I forgot that I was watching a Last of Us adaptation. It was the first time with an episode that featured Joel and Ellie pretty predominantly that I felt like the vibe of the game that they were capturing so well early on wasn't quite there for this one.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
Now, I understand that they're taking the title of The Last of Us very literally and trying to give us a larger picture of how all of this impacted different people. And I understand why that's necessary to pad the show out a little bit, because you can't do an exact replica of the game. And again, I'm fine with them expanding the lore in small doses, and when it's used properly.
That makes sense.
As this episode continues, we have an uneasy alliance between Henry and Joel. Meanwhile, Ellie and Sam are starting a blossoming friendship. We get a lot of Joel and Henry talking about the things that they've done and what it means to watch over another human being like they are both doing in this world. Basically pretty much slapping you in the face with the concept that they are setting at least someone up for some heartbreak.
Why do you cry?
Sam is also revealed to be deaf in this episode, and I think that was definitely a conscious choice made by the creative team. It makes him rely on Henry even more so, and it does add a little bit extra burden to their situation. Henry recognizes that he needs Joel's help to escape the city, so he comes up with this plan to use maintenance tunnels that may or may not be crawling with infected. Now I get it, they were pretty much in a no-win situation. If they stay, Kathleen finds them. If they go, they could possibly run into infected. But I don't know if I'd be so willing to head into an enclosed area and not know exactly what I'm getting myself into, especially when I have limited resources. So I can't say that I was 100% sold on their plan in this situation.
No, don't like that.
But ultimately they do end up making it through, and they emerge from underground in an abandoned neighborhood. And this to me is where this episode picks up a little bit. Not just from an action perspective, but from a doing things reminiscent of the world from the game perspective. At one point, Henry, Sam, and Ellie are pinned down by Kathleen and her men. And suddenly a horde of infected emerges from the ground, including a bloater, which is the first time we've seen one of them in the show. And basically this is where all hell breaks loose. I have to be honest, the shot of the infected rising out of the ground was one of my favorite things I've seen in this show all season.
I like it a lot.
It just looked so good cinematically, and it worked even better because they did it using practical effects. During all of this, there's also this video game-esque sequence where Joel is protecting Ellie from afar with a sniper rifle as she navigates through all the murder and mayhem going on around her. It was very well done. And just as quickly as we find out why exactly Kathleen is so dead set against Henry, it turns out that he made a morally righteous decision at some point to save his brother that ultimately got Kathleen's brother killed. And just as quickly as we got this revelation, Kathleen is taken out of the equation by one of the infected.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I have to be honest, the way that her and her whole unit were basically abruptly taken out of the situation did feel a bit anticlimactic to me. Again, it kind of felt like we wasted time on her. After assuming she would have a bigger role moving forward, she ended up only lasting 2 episodes. After the escape, it's revealed that Sam was bitten by one of the infected. And Ellie tries to save him by putting some of her Super Ellie blood on the bite wound.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Ultimately, it doesn't work and he ends up turning the next morning. He attacks Ellie only for Henry to be the one to shoot him, and this of course is too much for Henry mentally, and he ends up killing himself as well. And again, as much as they built up the character of Henry over the last couple of episodes, this felt like an odd choice in this moment. Although it was a shocking moment, if nothing else, and I will give them credit for that.
You didn't see that coming.
As the episode concludes, we have Ellie feeling guilty that she couldn't be the savior that everyone keeps telling her that she is. And then we have Joel, who is very much worried that he and Ellie are going to end up like Henry and Sam, thus solidifying how his relationship with Ellie has changed since they first met. Again, there is some interesting themes in this episode, even if I don't 100% agree how they were delivered.
Message!
I'm also not sold on the strategy of making these brand new characters feel important and dedicating significant amounts of time to them, only to end all of their stories abruptly. And this has now happened in 3 or 4 instances in the first 5 episodes. I guess it's starting to feel like a trend, and it's starting to feel a bit formulaic. I did enjoy all the scenes with the infected in this episode, but I don't know if that was enough for me to say that I thoroughly enjoyed it this week. To me, it was fine. It was nothing special. We'll have to see what happens when they switch gears next week and put Joel and Ellie in what appears to be a whole new location. All we can really hope for is a satisfying conclusion that doesn't get distracted by overindulgent side stories.
Don't waste my time!
Y'all be cool. Right on.